Hello, grade 9 math students. Yesterday we took off with making equations when we're only given slope and 1 point. So this is exactly what we did yesterday. So let's go into this example. Given a line with a slope of m equals -3 and passing through the point 1 and 2, find the equation of a line. So there's some key pieces of information right here off the hop. First one is, I don't know if you just heard that little cat yawn. Someone's tired in the Cox household. M equals -3, that's my slope. And this point here is going to tell us our x and y value. Okay, sorry, that was not a very good x. So our x and y value here. And we can use all of this information to find our equation of a line by using substitution. So we're going to fill in all of the information that we know and solve for the letter that's left. So we have our general equation of a line, which is always y equals mx plus b. And instead of a y, I can write a 2 because that's what this point is telling us. This point is telling us that y is 2. Instead of an m, I can write -3 because that's what that's telling us, our slope. And instead of an x, I can write a 1 because it's also telling us that x is 1 whenever y is 2. And I'm just going to write plus b to follow up the equation here. There's nothing for me to do on my left-hand side, so I'm just going to rewrite that. -3 times 1 is -3 plus b. So let's look at this. It's saying 2 equals -3 plus b. If I have -3 on the right-hand side of the equation, in order to undo that, I have to add it to the left-hand side. And that gets rid of it from the right-hand side because -3 plus 3 equals 0. So that leaves me with a b. And 2 plus 3 is 5. So I know now that my equation of a line is 5. Or sorry, my y-intercept is 5. And I can write my equation of a line by saying y equals, instead of an m, I'm going to write -3x plus 5. So what does this equation mean here? What does this equation that I found tell us? Well, this tells us that if I were to graph this line, I'd have a y-intercept at +5 and a slope of -3 over 1. So I'd be going down 3 over 1, okay? This plus 5 is stuff that information that I do not have from this question or what we were given. That's why we need to find it, okay? So today, instead of finding 1 point, now we're going to find, instead of finding our equation with just 1 point, we need to find our equation whenever we have 2 points and no other information. So I'm not going to be given a slope here, all right? The funny thing that you guys are not seeing is that I'm still talking with my hands, even though you can't see my face. So we need to recall that our slope is the same as saying rise over run. And what does that mean? Well, that means the change in y, which is what this triangle means. So triangle means it's delta, but it means the change in. So the change in y divided by the change in x. And what does that mean? Well, that means that we're going to take those 2 y points that we make from our line, our triangle, so our second y point minus our first one, all divided by our second x point minus the first x point. And this looks super confusing right here until we see that right here, I'm only given 2 points. I'm not given a slope. So I need to find that slope first. So in this equation, or in this type of question, the first step is to always find our slope. The second step then is going to be to find our y-intercept. Okay, so our first step is to find our slope. Our second step is to find our y-intercept. And once we have our slope, then it just becomes like yesterday's types of problems. Okay. So I have this question. It says, find the slope of the lines passing through the points C, so point C, 4 and 5, and D, -2 and 8. Okay. So in this question, I have point 1, point 2. I'm going to label my points here. So This is my first x, so that's why it has a little x1. My first y, that's why it has a little y1. My second x, my second y. Do you guys see that? So this is my first point, my second point. And I'm going to use my equation up above, my m equals equation, to find what my slope is. And we've been doing this all semester long. We just haven't been calling it this fancy equation. We've been saying how much has my rise gone up by, how much has my run gone across by, but we just haven't been subtracting them out loud. Okay, we've been finding that change. So my y2 here is going to be 8. That's what it says. So I'm going to write that first. Minus. My y1 here is 5. Divided by. My x2 is negative 2. And my x1 is 4. Okay. You don't have to put the bracket there. I'm not even really sure why I did. 8 minus 5, that's going to give me a solid 3. Negative 2 subtract 4, well, that's negative 6. Okay. And if I were to reduce this, it's going to be 3 can go into 6. So if I reduce this fraction, it's 1 over 2. It's the same as 1/2. And the general rule of thumb here is that whatever sign we have, if it's a negative sign, we're just going to write it out front of our bracket. Okay. I don't really like it on the bottom. So this is my slope. So I'm telling you that my slope is negative 1 over 2. So if this was on a graph, I'd be going down 1 unit over 2. So down 1, right 2. Well, now we need to find our I just wanted you to find the slope. So this is it. Okay, so math smiley face. So this is how we find our slope. And remember, you guys can pause and rewind, go back, listen, send emails, write in that Google Doc. So now let's actually find the equation. So now that I know how to find my slope, let's find my equation. So I'm going to start again by labeling my points x1, y1, x2, y2. And now let's try to find our slope. So I know m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay. My y2 here is 10. My y1 here is 2. Divided by x2 is 5, x1 is 1, okay, 10 minus 2 is 8, 5 minus 1 is 4, 8 divided by 4 gives me 2. So this is telling me that my slope in my equation is 2. So now I'm going to build my general equation of a line. And remember that my equation of a line is y equals mx plus b. And I'm going to fill in my slope here. So instead of an m, I'm going to write a 2 plus b. Here's where it can get confusing because we were given 2 points. We were given 2 x and y values. And yesterday we had to pick that value, so we put our x in and our y in, and we found what b was. Today is going to be exactly the same. You need to pick 1 point and do the substitution. It does not matter which point. It doesn't matter. So you can pick 1 and 2 or 5 and 10. You're going to get the same answer. So I'm going to pick the point 1 and 2 just because they're smaller numbers. I want to deal with smaller numbers. Okay? So instead of a y, I'm going to replace it with 2. Instead of an x, I'm going to replace it with 1 plus b. And again, I'm just getting these numbers from this point. Okay. Nothing for me to simplify on my left-hand side. I'm just going to rewrite my 2. 2 times 1 is 2 plus b. Now I'm adding 2 on my right-hand side. To move that over to my left-hand side, I have to subtract it because that's the opposite. That eliminates the 2 on my right-hand side, leaves me with b. And 2 minus 2 is 0. Okay. Let's just say that you had decided when you paused the video to try this on your own to use the other point. So let's see if that works. So I'm going to now try the opposite point, 5 and 10. And I'm going to show you that it does work indeed. So instead of a y, I'm going to replace it with a 10. Instead of an x, I'm going to replace it with a 5. Two times 5 is 10. And again, I'm adding 10 on the right-hand side, so I need to subtract it to move it to the left. That eliminates my 10 from my right-hand side. And 10 minus 10 is 0, so my y-intercept is indeed 0 here. Okay. So my very last step, and you don't have to show me that both work. I'm just showing you in this example. So now I'm going to fill in my equation of a line. So my mx plus b, I'm going to leave my y, replace my m with 2x plus 0, or we know that this is the same as saying y equals 2x. Okay? Next example. A line passes through -3 and -2, 6 and -8. Let's find the equation for this line. So again, I'm going to start by just labeling my points. x1, y1, x2, y2. Notice that my order, my x and y order, is not changing, and that I'm just being consistent. So if I call this first bracket x1, then this has to be y1. I can't say that this is x1, y2. That does not work. I could say that this was all the second point. That's fine as long as these little numbers match each other. So I should have an x1 and a y1, an x2 and a y2. Okay. So let's find our slope. So I know that my slope equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. My second y point is -8. My first y point is -2. Here I am going to put brackets in because I have two of the same signs beside each other. I need to make sure that I understand how that's going to shake down later. I'm going to write 6 instead of x2 and -3 instead of x1. Here, this negative and this negative actually make it a positive, right? Two negatives make a positive. So this is the same thing as saying -8 plus 2 and 6 plus 3. -8 plus 2, that's -6. 6 plus 3, that's 9. And if I reduce this fraction, 3 goes into both. So 6 divided by 3 gives me 2. 9 divided by 3 gives me 3. My negative sign goes out front. Okay. Notice that I'm leaving these in fractions, so it's best to always leave your slope as a fraction, just until we get to the point where we're finding our y-intercept. So the reason why I like my slope as a fraction is because I don't know, so this fraction equals 0.67 if I were to round it. And I don't really know what that means to me in terms of a rise and a run. Like if I told you that the slope was 0.67, would you know how many squares to go up and across? But now, if I tell you that it's -2 over 3, you know to go down 2 over 3. Okay, that's why I leave my slope as a fraction. Let's find our y-intercept. So our general equation is y equals mx plus b. Again, I'm just going to pick any of the 2 points. So I'm going to pick the first point. So instead of, I'm picking, at this point here, -3 and 2. Instead of a y, I'm going to replace that with -2. My m we just found was -2 over 3. And instead of an x, that's -3 plus b. Notice that this 3 and this 3 match. So I can cross them out. That leaves me with -1 in here. And the reason why it's a -1 is because those signs don't cancel because this was positive and this is negative. Okay? The other way that you could do this, and remember this from last class, is -2 times -3. I'm going to multiply my tops with my tops. Is going to end up being 6, -6. -6 divided by 3 is 2, and we're going to see that that's the same answer. So let's move on down a little bit. So -2 equals, now I'm going to just multiply across. -2 times -1, that gives me 2 plus b. Okay. I'm adding 2 on the right-hand side. I have to subtract it to bring it to the left. -2 minus 2, that's going to leave me with -4. So this means if I was looking on the graph, my y-intercept will be at y equals -4. Now I'm going to fill in my equation of a line. Gonna leave my y, replace my m with its slope, which was negative 2 over 3. The x goes beside it, and then minus 4 here for my slope. Okay. All right, so that is essentially today's lesson. Let's just go over some key concepts. So you can find the equation of a line if you know 2 points on the line. To find the equation, the first thing you're going to do is find the slope by substituting the 2 points into the slope formula, which we just said was our slope equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Find the y-intercept by substituting our slope and one of the points into y equals mx plus b. Solve for b. Write the equation by substituting m and b into your y equals mx plus b equation. So we leave our y and our x in there. All right, that's today's lesson. I've posted some practice problems. Make sure that you check in and check out that weekly reflection assignment. Miss you all.